Hello, church. So here's our devotional for July 21st on this Tuesday. And as I have sometimes said when starting my sermons, we're going to start in a weird place because I was thinking of and reminded of the musical Oklahoma. And if you've seen that movie version, the point at which I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm out for a little while. There's this extended dream dance sequence with Judd and several other characters and the cast just doing their thing, and it goes on forever. And it's not my favorite part or thing. I'm going to describe as our portion in Song of Songs today is somewhat of this continued dream fantasy sequence. And to take you back, Weems had made some introductory comments about this kind of non-linear sequence that sometimes comes up, and we hit it today, as well as what she quotes as being some of the most baffling verses in Scripture in terms of translation. So a lot of fun to be had. Today, we're going to be looking at verses 11 to 13, and this is going to finish off chapter 6, and then we'll jump into 7 tomorrow. So a few pieces of commentary and part of her, 2 parts from a reflection that I wanted to share as a part of ours. But we begin with our first portion of verses 11 to 12 in chapter 6. And Weems entitles this The Garden of Love. So we've encountered this garden imagery multiple times already, and we return to that. As a reminder from our previous couple of days, we've had the Daughters of Jerusalem, who I refer to as backup singers, like in the Shangri-Las for leader of the pack. And just kind of the word that Weems uses is interlocutors, and kind of moving the action along and calling her back after our protagonist has described her beloved, and the daughters say what's so special about him, and then she tells them, and the back and forth continues. So here we go with verses 11 and 12. I went down to the nut orchard to look at the blossoms of the valley, to see whether the vines had budded, whether the pomegranates were in bloom. Before I was aware, my fancy set me in a chariot beside my prince. Now, maybe you heard it differently. For me, in my ear, this sounds like a return to the protagonist, and again, in this kind of fantasy or dream sequence, just imagining herself with her beloved. However, there's some scholarly debate on that. Verses 11 to 12 are easily the most difficult in the entire book. They stand apart from the preceding unit and do not fit with what follows. The greatest difficulty with these verses has to do with the identifying the speaker. A case can be made that the shepherd continues to speak, albeit obliquely, about his love affair with the maiden. A case can be made also that the black-skinned woman is the speaker. And that's where I'm landing because of that imagery of putting in a chariot beside her prince. Even if one can reasonably ascribe verse 11 to a female speaker and determine that the inference of the verse is about lovemaking in the springtime, there remains the matter of verse 12. The latter invariably brings even the most intuitive interpreter to her or his exegetical knees. Now, if that was a little too wordy, what she's saying is verse 12 bust up people who are looking for meaning and trying to interpret and translate what is before them. Now she's going to reference another author, Falk. Falk admits defeat and simply refuses to hazard a guess about the translation or the meaning of the verse. In a bold move, she omits the line from her translation. But we should allow the verse to stand as an eloquent reminder, one, of the cultural distance between our world and the ancient world of biblical love poetry. Of two, of how formidable love poetry can be to the rigid, unimaginative exegete. Pastor Nick translation for what Weems just said. Come on, people. It's just love poetry. Maybe you're taking this a little too far or what. Yeah. And then three, of how imprecise language often is. Good words and mercy. Of how formidable love poetry can be to the rigid, unimaginative exegete or student. Wow. Okay. Now, here is our concluding verse 13. And then we're going to be hearing the daughters of Jerusalem again. Return, O Shulamite. Return, that we may look upon you. Why should you look upon the Shulamite as upon a dance before two armies? Okay. Now, I'm not going to do a whole bunch of stuff to try to explain that last odd verse because it continues in that thing, but a little bit of reflection for us. Song of Songs 6:4-10 portrays a man who defends the depth of his love and sentiments for a certain unknown young maiden who, for reasons unclear to us, has been deemed an unsuitable mate. We hear his defense of this maiden as unique, and his defense of their love as special. This is a rare glimpse at male love. Accounts of men driven by anger, jealousy, hatred, and cynicism, all in the name of God, abound in the Bible. But by comparison, only a few stories exist in the Bible about men falling in love. Adam rejoices at Eve's creation. Jacob falls for Rachel. Shechem is smitten by Dinah. David lusts after Bathsheba. But outside the poetry of Song and Songs, there are no descriptions of what it feels like to be a man in love. This is the case despite the fact that the biblical story of salvation is often inspired by and sometimes thwarted because of the romantic entanglements of many of the male protagonists. And then this is her concluding portion from her final paragraph. Finally, the guiding premise throughout this commentary is that Song of Songs is about more than just sex. To the extent that it is about anything, it is especially about male and female expressions of love and intimacy, the communion of self with the other, and the riddled journey toward mutuality. If this little book of love poetry can teach the church anything about sex, it is that sex is more than what we do with our genitals. Woo! I was thinking about changing that word to body parts, but wanted to honor her commentary and a very powerful word. So that's it for chapter 6. We'll be back with you for chapter 7 tomorrow as we continue in Song of Songs, and we will see you then. Have a great day and God's blessings.